Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now while this channel focuses primarily on PC gaming hardware, I'm willing to bet that for most of us, the gaming journey didn't start on a computer. No, if you're around 20 to 30 years old or you just love retro gaming, then chances are you or your family have owned one of these. This is a PlayStation 1. Now when you're younger you don't appreciate the tech inside these things, you just know that it's able to play all of your favourite games. The frame rate, the resolution, none of that really mattered. But today I thought it would be interesting to take a little bit of a look back at the PS1 in this retro teardown style video, talk about the hardware that makes it work and discuss the sort of gaming experience Sony's mid-90s console offered its players.
Sony's first home gaming console launched in December of 1994 in Japan, and it would be another 9 months before it released in North America and Europe, with Australia having to wait until November of 95. While the competition, namely Nintendo and Sega, had their own competing 5th generation consoles on the market, the PlayStation's overriding success came partly due to Sony's welcoming inclusion of third-party developers, as opposed to the isolationist approach taken by the other two. So let's take a look inside this thing and talk about the power that the PS1 possessed. As I'm in the UK, I own a PAL or PAL variant of the console, but if you're in the USA or Japan then you'll have owned the NTSC version, the significance of which I'll be talking about later. Taking the PS1 apart is a very simple process. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's just as simple as dismantling a PC. All you need is a standard Phillips head screwdriver. There are 6 screws in total that need removing on the base of the console, all of which are the same size, so I'm assuming putting it back together should also be very easy. The first components you'll notice are the internal power supply board and Sony's custom CD reader assembly, which of course could also read audio discs, and the SCPH5903 model, released in Asia, could also play video CDs. The next part of the video involves making our way to the fun stuff, the main components that made the PS1 what it is. And to get to them, well, this just involves removing a couple of cables. First to go is the lead connecting the power board to the motherboard. The next one creates a link between the aforementioned motherboard and the front memory card readers, the size of which would have been 1 megabyte. I believe there were a few unofficial memory cards available on the market, but some games would refuse to save to these, so sticking to Sony's own one was the best choice. Besides, back then it was plenty of room to store all of your save games. Next up, we're disconnecting the 2 cables from the CD reader. The unit itself just sits precariously upon 3 notches and slides right off once the cables have been removed. I'm cleaning up each component as I go along, but surprisingly there isn't much dust inside this nearly 25-year-old console. In order to get the board out, we now need to unscrew the memory card reader from the front here. Again, a simple 2-screw removal process. A couple more screws after that and we can take off the EMI shield, which hides all of the best bits underneath. This secondary sheeting is soldered to the board, and it's underneath here where the fun happens. Thankfully, due to the power of X-ray vision and maybe some editing, we can look right through it. CPU wise, we have a 32-bit MIPS R3000A clocked at 33.8 MHz. Sure, it's easy to laugh at this now measly speed, but an upgraded version, and radiation-proof version of this processor, was used to power NASA's New Horizons space probe. You know, the one that flew past Pluto. Seriously. Combine this with 2 megabytes of EDO DRAM and a 32-bit Sony GPU with 1 megabyte of video memory, and you've got yourself a console capable of running games at anywhere between 256x224 and 640x480 resolution. So let's talk about the actual games, the primary purpose of the PS1. This is where the whole PAL/NTSC thing comes in. Back in the 90s, PAL territories used TVs running at 50Hz, and most games were made with NTSC regions in mind. This meant that for PAL markets, games had to be converted to run. The easiest way to do this meant running the game at about 16.7% slower. So, a game that runs at say 30 frames per second on a PS1 purchased in the United States would run at 25 frames per second here in the UK, and a game running at 60 FPS in the US would run at 50 FPS here. When Sony introduced last year's PS1 Classic, it used a combination of both PAL and NTSC games in all territories, so everyone suffered. Insert Nelson from The Simpsons here. Let's forget about the frame rate though, because it's fair to say that despite this technical limitation, there were certainly a few titles that pushed this hardware to its limit, and broke away from the standard gaming experience. For example, Tekken 3 not only targeted 60 FPS but ran at an upscaled 480i resolution, making it one of the most impressive PS1 titles graphically in my opinion. The second instalment of Driver was also a technical marvel at the time. It featured an open world, realistic crash physics, and pretty impressive graphics, not to mention the director mode that surely made full use of the PlayStation's hardware. Today, emulators have made the need for a physical retro console like the PS1 non-existent to some, especially when taking into consideration the fact that anyone in any region can run these old school games at Full HD or even 4K with 60 frames per second and beyond. Still, there are plenty of PS1s going cheap on eBay for anyone looking for that authentic mid-90s gaming experience. So I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the PlayStation 1, Sony's first home console, and by today's standards, obviously the weakest, but it certainly paved the way for the future generations of console gaming. I mean, I've looked at the PS2 and PS3 on this channel, so I thought why not look back at where it all began. And I'm sure it's a console that a lot of people had when they were younger as well, and may even continue to use today. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.